Life has an alien origin. This was proved by scientists at the University of Arizona in the USA. In a Martian meteorite found in Antarctica, they found ammonia, a nitrogen-containing compound. Nitrogen is part of the DNA of intelligent life. Perhaps life came to Earth from the depths of space during a meteor shower. But meteorites and asteroids have repeatedly become the cause of the death of this life. And a new threat is already close. Space is riddled with deadly asteroid trails. Each fragment will eventually find shelter on some planet. It will shudder from the impact, and an indelible trace will remain on the surface, a crater. On Mars, on the Moon, on Mercury, that is, on planets that either lack an atmosphere or have a very small atmosphere. Like Mars has a weak atmosphere, these very traces of falls are quite clearly visible. Well, the Moon is generally a journal, one might say a cosmic journal, on which traces of falling bodies over billions of years are recorded. Once the whole world has already died from an asteroid impact. The tragic fate of Mars is a clear example of this. On the red planet, on the plain of Hellas, there is a crater with a diameter of 2,000 kilometers. This is the trail of the killer asteroids. A giant rock crashed into the planet and, like an explosive bullet, reached the mantle. Martian volcanoes spewed tons of red-hot lava, which flooded the only continent. Clouds of ash dispersed in the atmosphere. In a matter of days, the deep seas evaporated, and the soil and vegetation burned. The rotation of the impact field was disrupted, and this led to the loss of the magnetosphere, which protected the planet from cosmic radiation. Such a powerful catastrophe, it in fact led to the fact that the atmosphere was dumped at Mars and its ocean, in fact. Everything evaporated, then everything froze, and Mars has turned into such a lifeless desert. Science does not know who observed the death of Mars. However, the Earth 65 million years ago almost repeated his fate. Dinosaurs were the witnesses of that catastrophe. An asteroid measuring 20 kilometers crashed into a place today known as the Gulf of Mexico. The impact formed a 200-kilometer crater check-up, the largest on the planet. When such a body fell, a huge fire fountain was formed, the radiation firm, which caused massive fires, at distances of up to 2,000 or 3,000 kilometers from the point of impact. Overnight, the planet was on fire. All the forests were burning. Clouds of ash did not let in sunlight, and the Earth was plunged into hellish darkness. Was thrown a huge amount in the atmosphere. First, hot debris. They began to scatter all over the Earth because the speeds are huge. That is, they reached even the opposite side of the Earth. In just 40 minutes along the trajectories, like ballistic missiles. In other words, this incandescent mass of all objects fell out in different parts of the Earth, and a worldwide fire began. Prehistoric reptiles, burned alive, drowned in floods, fell into the abyss. No one could survive. The axis of the Earth has been shaken, and the climate has changed forever. Forests died, food for the anti-Nazars. In other words, it was a global disturbance of the entire ecosystem. A similar catastrophe can happen again on Earth at any moment. Scientists have created a mathematical model of the fall of asteroids. Large celestial body larger than 10 kilometers, which can destroy the planet, intersect the Earth's orbit about 100 million years. But there are many smaller asteroids in space, and the chances of meeting them are much greater. Kilometer-sized bodies fall about once every million years. Such bodies cause regional catastrophes and can destroy an average European country. Bodies 100 meters in size fall about once every 100 years. In terms of power, these bodies are comparable to the largest nuclear bombs that are now on Earth. Therefore, the fall of such a body can lead to the death of an entire metropolis. By now, astronomers think they have calculated most of the most dangerous asteroids larger than a kilometer. However, space is full of movement. At any moment, two asteroids will accidentally collide with each other like billiard balls, and one will head towards the Earth. Bodies that, in principle, may pose a risk of collision with the Earth in some foreseeable future, say, over the next 100 years, are known to be large. Almost all large ones are more than a kilometer. There are about 120 of them. And smaller bodies, well, this is 100 meters, 200 meters, they are difficult to detect. At least one threat is almost on the horizon. The asteroid Apophis, named after the Egyptian god of terror, rushes straight to Earth. Its diameter is 300 meters, and its mass is 5 million tons. This rock threatens to crash into the planet at a speed of 45,000 kilometers per hour. The asteroid will approach the Earth in 19 years, in 2029th year. For a very short distance according to astronomical concepts. This is about 30,000 kilometers from the surface of the Earth with a little. What happens next? We know what will fly by. That is, the accuracy of our calculations is such that we know exactly what will fly by in the 29th year, but we cannot accurately predict the change in its orbit. But if an asteroid falls into the gravitational trap of the Earth in exactly 7 years, in 2036 year, it will meet with our planet. The consequences will be terrible. The place of the fall of the Apophis is a strip 50 kilometers wide. If it touches Russia, it will pass through the Pacific Ocean, Central America, and end in the Atlantic. 50 cities will be destroyed. In this case, a huge amount of dust, ash is released. Fires will start, tsunamis, earthquakes. Processes similar to nuclear winter will begin. Nuclear winter is what scientists call climate change after the atomic war. The effect of the asteroid fall will be the same. Darkness and cold will envelop the Earth. The soil will be cut through by black dried-up cracks. The air will turn into a poisonous veil. The sun's rays will not be able to penetrate through it, and the temperature will drop to minus 25 degrees. All living things will die from radiation sickness, hypothermia, hunger, and epidemics. Residents of the villages surrounding Chernobyl know how it will be. Today, they have returned to their native places again, despite the official ban on entering the 30-kilometer exclusion zone. Oksana Butsenko remembers that clear April day when the sky exploded and a black cloud of death hung first over Pripyat, and then over her family.
We saw black clouds over the station. It burned there for a long time, and 3 days later, everyone was told to leave. At first, we didn't understand anything, and then people started to get sick, to leave early.
More than 300 people live in the zone, mostly old people. Everyone keeps a farm on his own farmstead. There are fish in the river, the forests are full of game. These people know that they taste slow death every day and walk on a land infected with radiation. They live in ruined huts. However, no one is waiting for them anywhere else. They came here to die in their native lands.
Yes, we are used to it already. We live as we live. What can I do? There's nothing to be done.
The Ministry of Emergency Situations of Ukraine assures that nature is being freed from radiation. However, the decay period of some substances is hundreds of thousands of years. The 30-kilometer zone around the Chernobyl nuclear power plant looks like it will forever remain a dead spot, in the middle of the wonderful lands of Polisi. If the asteroid Apophis falls into the ocean, it will form a funnel about 8 kilometers in diameter. As a result, 20-meter tsunami waves will hit the coast of Florida and California. But an asteroid can hit a volcano or a lithospheric fault. A fall of a body of this size cannot pass painlessly, even for people living very far away. First of all, a very strong tsunami wave is formed. With the fall of bodies of this size, the tsunami will be the wave will be very strong. It runs several times around the Earth, and almost all the coasts will suffer. Emitted a lot of water. This will lead to a change in atmospheric chemistry. It can cause strong climatic shifts. Three components are needed to protect the planet from asteroid danger. The first one is a ground-based tracking system, which only the United States and Russia have, but for other purposes. It should be understood that today, these tools are optimized for completely different tasks for military applications. And in order to reconfigure them to solve the tasks of detecting cosmic bodies in deep space, of course, certain improvements are needed. The second component is a base of unmanned reconnaissance and interceptor vehicles. It can be created only by the efforts of the entire international community. And the third one is the system of repelling a space attack by means of missile defense. Any country can handle this. Can be used to propose as a means of warning of missile attack, which are available in Russia, and the means of warning of a nuclear missile strike that exist in the United States of America. And of course, if European countries and China join this program, they can offer their funds to solve a common problem. When it turns out that the asteroid Apophis will really hit the ground, to meet him would send a spacecraft that rejects its orbit with the shots. Fortunately, it is possible to approach the Apophysis. However, starting from the 2048 year, astronomers are waiting for a meeting with larger and more formidable opponents. Disaster architecture is becoming increasingly popular in the world. These are various capsule houses, arcs, and bunkers in which you can survive, if not the death of the planet, then a global catastrophe for sure. Military engineer Eugene Ubiko building in the suburbs of the rescue pod. He called his invention the Doomsday Capsule. This is a mobile shelter that protects from high temperatures, from toxic fumes, from such impacts as a hurricane, from a tsunami, landslides, mudslides, earthquakes. The heavy-duty mobile bunker is designed to accommodate for people for 40 days. It is for this period that there will be enough food, water, and oxygen reserves. For a short time, up to 10 people can hide here. They should not be afraid of raging waves or falling into fiery abysses. If this module is installed in the attic of a 10-story building, you can fall, there will be nothing with the crew, because the crew will be in special soft chairs, in belts, in special overalls, and equipped with airbags, as in a car. Yevgeny Slayko is going to equip the cabin company of his capsule with navigation equipment and a communication system. The places in the bunker under construction have already been booked. The engineer's neighbors are gradually packing supplies in case of the end of the world. If nothing serious happens in the world, the capsule will be converted into a sauna, and the whole company will relax in a modern interior. But Evgeny knows the history of the planet well and is serious. I came to the conclusion that our planet is cyclically, let's say, visited by a series of such cataclysms that lead to the death of a civilization such as Atlantis, Illyria, or other well-known civilizations, the remnants of which we observe literally in every corner of the Earth. Judging by all signs, and according to my calculations, a very serious lithospheric cataclysm awaits us in December of the year 2012. Biologists have found that dangerous viruses can get to Earth together with meteorites. Microorganisms mutate and look for a new habitat. A person can become the most ideal. Scientists believe that deadly infections hive, SARS and avian fungus have a cosmic origin. And the Spanish mushroom was introduced by the Tunguska meteorite. Bacteria have a collective mind. He controls their behavior and numbers, it is established. He would even be able to give some commands. You see, this is a completely different form of life. We are absolutely not immune from the threat of the spread of alien bacteria in us. It is there. We just prefer not to think about it. If, let's say, a cosmic virus decides to settle in our bodies, we won't even notice it. In the spring of 1906 year, the inhabitants of the Tobolsk province heard the earth shake. For a week after that, the sky shone with a pink mist at night. By morning, he was sinking to the ground. Domestic cattle, which fell into the fog, died a day later. And then the first sick peasants began to be delivered to provincial hospitals. The symptoms were strange: boils on the skin of the face and hands, convulsions, high fever, and weakness. After a short time, it has become an epidemic. Medicine at the beginning of the 20th century could not answer the question of the origin of this unknown virus. If we compare the fact that a meteorite fell, apparently, which took place, then extraterrestrial bacteria could have spread. The epidemic was localized, and all the sick recovered. Or the incubation period has passed, and alien bacteria have simply taken root in their bodies. Another strange story took place half a century ago in the Zhikovsky district of the Krasnoyarsk territory. For several days in a row, a huge disc-shaped object hung over the right bank of the Yenisei. Locals noticed that the water was literally bubbling under it. A lot of fish were accumulating there. Cunning fishermen got up under the disc and got an unheard-of catch. However, everyone who ate this fish began to bleed and lose consciousness. There, too, in the analysis wasn't found anything special. Of course, the catch was seized, people were cured. Several people, in my opinion, were even brought out of a coma. But all this was hushed up. But however, the events began to take on the character of an environmental catastrophe. Tons of dead fish were floating on the river. But all this was explained by secret tests. In 1973, the famous English physicist Crick and the American biochemist Orgel published a hypothesis that the origin of life on Earth was the work of an extraterrestrial civilization that sent the seeds of life to Earth with the help of a spacecraft. The main arguments are the presence in all living organisms of the Earth of molybdenum, rare for its mineral, as well as a single genetic code, which allegedly proves the origin of life from a single microorganism. No one could refute this theory. There is only one event, the consequences of which are comparable to the fall of a giant asteroid to Earth. And it's coming. The US Academy of Sciences predicts literally the end of the world on the whole planet in the 2012 year. The cause will be geomagnetic storms of unprecedented strength. They will be caused by solar flares. The energy that this boiling cauldron bursts out and sometimes, breaking the strongest magnetic fields, comes out in the form of energy and particles. And the particles, the flow of particles, this is called, in general, the solar wind. In another way, this is radiation. That is, which, in general, is dangerous for biological objects. The solar wind will increase. The star will throw a deadly stream of radioactive substance towards the Earth. Sunspots are an area of magnification of the magnetic field, and the solar wind is plasma. It is very hot, rarefied. Currents flow through the plasma, which propagate further, flow through the Earth's magnetosphere, fall into the magnetosphere along magnetic lines of force, and in general, currents of millions of amperes flow over our heads. On the 22nd of September, 2012 year, the sky over the entire planet will be illuminated with multicolored flashes of the northern lights, which will be visible even during the day. Transformers and power plants will light up with a firework of sparks. Overload in the Earth's electromagnetic field will disable all power grids. The lights on the entire planet will go out in about 90 seconds. Satellites and planes will fall from the sky. Trains and elevators will stop. There will be no water and no heat. Radio and television will be silenced. This has already happened 150 years ago. Night over America became day. Red and green flashes of radiance shimmered in the sky. Then all telegraph networks in the USA failed. And in 1989, a much smaller solar storm de-energized half of Canada. If the forecast of American scientists comes true, humanity will have 15 minutes to save. A surge in solar activity will be recorded by unmanned vehicles that are in orbit around the Sun. When we see their strong increase in their flow, such a surge, we can give an alert signal to the Earth that a magnetic storm is coming, hiding. But the problem is that after we give this signal, until the moment when we see vibrational ones at these points, it's about 1.5 million kilometers from Earth. The flow of this plasma will pass this distance in about less than an hour. In other words, we give a very accurate, almost 100% forecast, but with not very much anticipation. Center for Forecasts of the Geophysical Situation of the Institute of Terrestrial Magnetism. Here predict space weather. Solar activity will increase. There will be more flashes. They will be more powerful. There will be more emissions of solar matter. They will also be larger and faster. Magnetic storms will be more frequent, and they will also become more powerful. And in general, we have activity in all these areas, in the sense that the space weather will get worse. Astronomers judge the influence of the Sun on the Earth by changes on its surface. Our star is a huge gas ball, and at the same time, a thermonuclear reactor. There are spots, flashes, and loops in the Sun. Their appearance means a change in the geomagnetic situation. The forecast can be given for a day ahead, no more, until the substance reaches the Earth and plunges into the magnetosphere. The magnetic field is a protective flow of particles that is formed during the rotation of the iron core of the planet. The magnetosphere reflects cosmic radiation. However, not all of them. If there were no magnetic field at all, then there would be no life. We know it, for example, the Moon, where there is no magnetic field, that is, high-energy particles stick into the surface. And when there is a magnetic field, they deviate, as in the case of the Earth. Then an important factor is the presence of the atmosphere. The atmosphere then absorbs ultraviolet light, which kills all living things. That is, it greatly weakens it. Such a high-energy part is cut off. The problem is that the Sun is unpredictable. Astronomers have identified a conditional 11-year cycle in the life of a star from the fading of all processes to the age. Its borders fluctuate plus or minus 2 or 3 years. At 2000, according to calculations, there should be a peak of activity. However, the Sun does not live up to expectations. In recent years, it has been conducted too quietly, and events can go in two ways. In the history of observations, the so-called Maunder minimum is known, when almost nothing happened on the Sun. And by the way, this behavior has greatly affected the climate of the Earth. There was such a period of the Maunder minimum. Approximately it lasted 70 years, from 1640th to 1710th year, when there were practically no sunspots on the Sun. But it is known that this period was cooling on Earth. According to all descriptions, where there has never been ice, people skated there. It is known historically, there was a period of cooling. Now there are also different forecasts, but one of them is that there will be a low cycle this and the 24th. Perhaps there may be subsequent ones, too. But the silence of the sun may be the calm before the storm. Perhaps our star is accumulating hidden reserves, and in the year 2012, it will bring down a hurricane of radiation on us. There is some truth in this. They are sure that this will be the 12th year. The solar cycle has really been delayed in this development. It seems to be a few years late, the rise of the solar cycle. And this is always fraught. Here is such a stormy one, because it seems to have stayed too long at the start. But if after that, according to such general laws, it can quite strongly to jerk. The sun does not just physically affect the Earth's biosphere. Social activity of people is connected with its cycles. This was discovered by Alexander Chizhevsky, a Russian-Soviet brilliant scientist. He jokingly called himself a sun worshipper. In all weathers, he took out a telescope into the yard and sketched sunspots.
Back in 1914, when his father was at war, he hung a map of Europe over his bed and marked the movement of Russian enemy troops there with white and black flags. And one day he discovered that on those days when he had to tinker with rearranging the flags on the map the most, these days he had to sketch the sunspots the most.
In order to substantiate and confirm his ideas, Chizhevsky needed a lot of statistical material. It turned out that cosmic radiation affects the course of history. His statistics showed that almost everything is connected with the sun, and the number of emigration of the locust population and outbreaks of epidemic diseases, and the number of such acts of violence. He conducted statistics according to police data in France and surprisingly found the result, that the number of such unmotivated rapes in France somehow strongly correlates with the quality of the village of Sunny 5. Chizhevsky discovered that revolutions and wars on Earth occur at the moments of solar flares. The International Congress on Biophysics and Space Biology in 1939th year in New York named Chizhevsky Leonardo da Vinci of the 20th century and nominated him for the Nobel Prize. But the Soviet scientist refused it. He was not released from the country and was sent to camps for a long time, and all his archives were classified. St. Petersburg astrophysicist Kirill Butusov noticed the connection between solar and social activity independently. Many years later, first of all, he decided to discuss this with the brilliant scientist Nikolai Kozyrev, who also suffered from repression. So I told Nikolai Alexandrovich that I had discovered such a connection between solar activity and all revolutions. The largest revolutions, keep quiet, you don't need to tell anyone about it, because Stalin put Yatsky and Chizhevsky in jail for this, for finding a connection between solar activity and revolution. And they'll put you in jail, too. Now we can trace how this law works. The basis is a 4-year period. Here are the highlights of these cycles. The 5th year is the First Russian Revolution, the October Revolution, the Great Patriotic War, Constitutional Crisis. The next dangerous period is the beginning of the 2013 year. All world religions are based on the worship of the sun. The oldest faith on Earth, Zoroastrianism, is dedicated to a single solar deity. During the Middle Ages, it was believed that the sun was an intelligent being. Modern scientists also do not deny the existence of plasma life. Physicists tend to consider ball lightning as one of its manifestations. Mathematician Arkady Lerman had a chance to observe the strange behavior of ball lightning. This case was fatal for him. That summer, he went to the country and worked on his dissertation in the evenings. It was based on the solution of a mathematical problem, which Arkady could not do. In desperation, he gave up calculations and decided to go out for a walk. Looking out the window, I realized that it would not work. A leaden thundercloud hung over the village. The room quickly darkened. There was such a thunderstorm that day that I didn't even dare turn on the electricity. I was sitting in the semi-darkness, thinking about my problem. Well, there wasn't much to do. And suddenly I see a fireball flew into the room through the window. Through the glass, without melting it, without breaking it, flew into the room and hung a table, well, about the size of a little more than an orange. The ball lightning silently floated around the room, as if exploring the room. Arkady froze in horror. The fiery guest was approaching the table with working calculations. At any second, there could be a fire, and priceless papers would be destroyed. It hung over my desk for quite a long time. I even tried to examine it. But it was painful to look at her, because she was very bright. The middle is up to white, so bright. And there's a blue glow around the edges. Well, it's like looking at the sun with the naked eye during the day. Approximately the same effect. Can you imagine a little sun in your room? Suddenly, the balloon took off and rushed out of the window at breakneck speed. Arkady was amazed to see an inscription on the glass made as if with soot. It was left by a ball lightning. It was a mathematical formula on glass, but not some simple formula, namely the one that I needed. It was this link that I lacked to solve my problem. I have solved more complex problems, but now at the moment, I can say and not hesitate to admit it, this lightning, helped me in solving my problem. The original version about the origin of ball lightning was expressed by the Moscow physicist Boris Ignatov. He believes that the glowing object is a microstar. Ball lightning is built according to the same scheme as our sun, only billions of times smaller. And just the model of any star, in particular stars, a white dwarf, a neutron star, and even our sun, very well reflect the model of the structure of its core and energy source. Because ball lightning consists of two natural bodies. It is the shell and the source of its energy, which is located inside the shell. Our sun is not eternal. It sprays its substance into space, losing 1 million tons every second. When the hydrogen and helium run out, the star will turn into a red giant. When the sun begins to turn into a red giant, it will begin to swell significantly and turn red. And indeed, the boundary of the sun will be somewhere close to the Earth's orbit. Therefore, generally speaking, the sky will be filled with such a huge red ball. Of course, the Earth's temperature would be much higher than now. The red giant emits much more, so no life, apparently, can survive at this moment on Earth. Increasing, the sun will absorb the nearest planets, Mercury, Venus, and probably the Earth. The other planets will change their orbits, and then it will gradually begin to cool down, and the release of energy will stop, and on the contrary, absorption will begin, and as a result it will turn into a white dwarf, around which the remnants of the planets of the solar system will rotate. The sun has already lived half of its life. When the life of a star approaches sunset, people will have to look for another star system with a new planet to inhabit. There are no more than 4 billion years left before the death of our sun. A living being is not only the sun, but also the Earth. According to some theories, our planet reacts to wars and pollution of nature with global cataclysms. This is how the Earth is cleansed of its harmful inhabitants. It can be considered a coincidence, but the bloody events in Egypt and Libya in winter were followed by a terrible earthquake and tsunami in Japan. Look at what our lifestyle has led to. There is almost no place left untouched by civilization in Japan. Nature punishes us for this. If we had not exploited the Earth so much and lived in harmony with the surrounding world, there could have been fewer victims and destruction. An unprecedented earthquake caused the Earth's axis to shift by 15 centimeters. Earlier, it had already shifted by 6 centimeters after a similar disaster in Sumatra. Perhaps this is the start of the tragic events of the 2012 year, which everyone is talking about. The change of the Earth's magnetic poles has already begun. The well-known history of their movement, the speed at which they move, and this is constantly changing and in a rather chaotic way. And they remain magnetic anomalies at the surface, and they don't let the field disappear at all, as it were. In the north of the globe, the magnetic field is charged with a minus sign. In the south it is plus. Now the signs are changing. This has happened many times in the history of the planet. A number of researchers believe that the magnetosphere will decrease during the reverse polarity and will pass harmful radiation. And it is already known that the North Magnetic Pole is shifting towards Russia. The center of activity, the center of this activity is polar. It is shifting from it towards Russia. Scientists' forecasts of future global catastrophes converge to the period of the end of the 2012, the beginning of the 2013 year. Amazingly, it is then that a surge in solar and seismic activity, social changes, and climate change are expected. There will be no end of the world, of course. But we will go through the hardest trials. Oddly enough, it is the same date that is called in the prophecies of the ancient Maya people. This civilization lived on the territory of modern Mexico. From somewhere they knew about the cataclysms that took place on Earth 300 million years ago. Or will they only happen in 10,000 years? I would say why the ancient priests of ancient may need events that took place 300 million years ago. It's just that these are the reference points of catastrophic events that once occurred. For example, 65 million years ago, a giant asteroid fell, beat all the dinosaurs. Here is the reference point. Then we take a few reference points, and all the mathematics and rhythmics that we observe today, we can already build a kind of grid, a system from which we see the probability here, 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 and here. The Maya believed that the universe breathes, inhales, and exhales. In these cycles, life arises, develops, dies, and is born again. The next cycle will end on December 21st, 2012 year. Then the next one will start. But the ancients also have interesting sources on this topic. And what has always captivated me, fascinated me in ancient texts, is the idea that all this has already happened once. Now, if you go back to these texts, you can see what it was. And given that it was cyclical, you can almost unmistakably see what awaits, for example, our civilization in the next 10-30 years. The Maya described their gods as white-skinned, fair-haired people who sailed from the north on self-propelled boats. The gods taught the Maya people the sciences, gave them a calendar, knowledge about cosmic cycles, built pyramids, and left. The most prominent Maya emperor, Pakal, is buried in one of the pyramids in the ancient city of Palenque. His tomb is the subject of ongoing disputes among scientists. The mummy of the king, is 2 meters tall, while the Maya Indians themselves were short. The skull does not yet have an elongated shape and a sloping forehead, which is not typical for humans. The sarcophagus is covered with a 5-ton slab with a magnificent relief. The emperor is depicted with his toes dermed. The mummy has the same injury, so the other parts of the bas-relief are also true. The picture shows a pilot strapped to a chair in a spacesuit with a breathing apparatus next to the spacecraft control panel. Levers in front of him, behind the power plant, and nozzles with jet jets. The gods came from the sky and communicated with the rulers. Maybe there's an astronaut depicted there, for God's sake, maybe. But we can't prove it. That is, we can only assume, and that's it. Pyramids built by the gods, by a strange coincidence, are located in the belt of high seismic activity of the planet. A group of Russian scientists managed to conduct geophysical measurements at the foot of the Great Pyramid of Cheops in Egypt. Geophysicists went on an expedition with us, who discovered an increase in the amplitude of seismic vibrations. In other words, they measured seismic vibrations at the foot of the pyramid, around it, and at the top. But, unfortunately, we did not manage to climb the Great One, but on some smaller ones, these experiments were carried out. An increase in the amplitude of seismic vibrations by 20 or more times at the top of the pyramid was recorded quite clearly. In other words, the pyramid is like a focusing element. Seismologists know that a few days before an earthquake, the Earth's crust begins to shake. These microscopic vibrations can be felt by animals. If the pyramid can pick up or amplify the signals of the Earth, the question arises, is it not there for this purpose? I came to the conclusion that the Earth's pyramids are engineering and geophysical complexes. They are scattered all over the planet. First of all, these are complexes in order to extinguish an earthquake. These are earthquake dampers. Ancient texts describe such an impact of the pyramids. Modern scientists, the geometry of these structures can affect the surrounding space. They controlled possible future catastrophes and cataclysms. And what is interesting is that when you look at the map of even those pyramids that have been preserved today, it is clearly visible that all these complexes are somehow in a zone of high activity, namely seismic activity, which manifests itself not constantly, but during special periods, one of which is now approaching.
Которая проявляет себя не постоянно, но в особые периоды, один из которых сейчас надвигается.
Amazingly, the ancient peoples have knowledge that the Earth revolves not only around the Sun. She flies through the galaxy and sometimes passes dangerous areas. From the archaic language, it can be understood that we are talking about certain force fields in space that affect the magnetic shells of stars and planets. The prophecies of the ancients coincide with the predictions of scientists. The sun is going crazy. And the next time the sun goes crazy, it will start from December 2012. Why December? That's why December 21st is 12. It's the winter solstice. This is the moment when the Earth's core emits a special energy flow. This event is cyclical. It takes place 4 times a year, solstice, equinoxes. But when this energy flow is superimposed on what comes from the sun, then here on Earth, as it were, a very special process is launched that Earthlings will have to go through. It will be very difficult. The climate on Earth will change. Global warming will enter an active phase. The world's ice will begin to melt. The largest reserves of them are in Greenland. The level of the world's oceans will rise rapidly. This will mean flooding of many territories. Experts have already drawn up a disaster map. Half of America will go underwater. Europe will suffer greatly. For a long time, experts attributed the increase in air temperature to harmful emissions. However, it turned out that people cannot destroy the planet. Blame space. What awaits us? If we talk about Greenland, we have already indicated that the ice will melt. America, California, Florida, terrible forces, typhoons, storms, earthquakes, flooding that will come and go.
Тайфуны, бури, землетрясения, затопления, которые будут приходить и отходить.
Some territories are very possible against the background of seismic tremors and earthquakes will go underwater. South America. Unusual winters and summers for these climatic zones. The summer will be very hot, and the winter will be extremely cold with very high frosts. Europe. North Africa, the onset of the desert due to very high temperatures, crops will die. We will observe fires in Russia this summer, smoke in Spain, Italy, Germany, Turkey. Strong earthquakes will befall Iran, Iraq, Syria. According to all forecasts, nothing will happen to most of the territory of Russia, especially in the regions of western Siberia and the Urals. However, no one knows how much land the flood will flood and where the asteroid will fall. No one will take care of the fate of humanity except himself. And another strange observation. No great civilization has existed for more than 6,000 or 8,000 years. What is it? An unknown law that prevents humanity from reaching heights. Or someone rearranging the pieces on the chessboard of the Earth shakes the board every time a person breaks out into space.